During the 9 years the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, or FOCAC, has been in existence, trade between Africa and China has increased from $10.5 billion to $106.8 billion in 2008. And despite the global economic crisis, Chinese direct investment into Africa during the first 3 quarters of this year is already up 77% to $875 million.
Growth of trade by 33% per annum in such difficult times in world trade, such huge increases, more than 75% in Chinese investments in Africa. Again, in such difficult times, they are all telling you a very positive story about the trade and investment links with China.
According to Chatham House, 80% of China's imports from Africa are mineral products, 70% of which is crude oil, leading to some accusations that China is only interested in and is in fact monopolizing the continent's natural resources. However, Premier Wen Jiabao put a different spin on the figures.
China is not the biggest importer of energy or oil from Africa. China's import of Africa's resources and energy only account for 13% of Africa's total exports, and China's investment in African oil amounts to 1/16 of the total investment here.
While delegates such as Victoria Kalima, who runs one of Zambia's largest agribusinesses, were keen to point out the benefits of China's involvement in the continent.
We've been doing business with the Chinese for the past 5 years, and we've seen a huge growth because of our dealings with the Chinese.
Still, there's no question that many of Africa's leaders, such as Alex Guattari, Director of Finance at one of the continent's biggest development banks, wants to take the relationship to a more advanced level of economic partnership.
We want to see, technology being transferred to the African continent so that a lot of the resources that are currently being shipped to China, there can be a value addition at the local level, and then the African economies will benefit a lot more.
The Chinese Premier promised delegates his country would take further steps to promote the continent's human capital, including the creation of a $1 billion development fund.
We are considering as well the issue of investment in human capital as a priority, and I like very much the emphasis of the Chinese Premier on this particular subject.
And some Chinese companies have already begun the process.
Until now, we already set up 6 training centers in Africa. I remember one is in Egypt, in Smart Village, another one in Tunis, and the third one in Nigeria, and the fourth one in South Africa. Totally, we have 6. Until now, every year, I think we do good training for around 12,000 African people.
China also took pains to highlight the beneficial aspects of its relationship with Africa, announcing $10 billion in preferential loans over the next 3 years, the forgiveness of debts owed by 33 African countries, as well as a reduction in tariffs on 95% of goods from other of the continent's poorest nations. It also pledged support in other areas.
For example, we have already proposed we will help African countries establish 100 solar power and biogas facilities, and build 30 hospitals and 30 anti-malarial centres.
China's policy of non-interference in a country's domestic affairs, just as long as it doesn't have links to Taiwan, has drawn criticism, particularly from the West. Critics point to unfettered dealings with countries such as Sudan and Guinea, where soldiers recently killed 150 democracy protesters. But China's policy did draw praise from leaders such as Robert Mugabe.
It was here at Sharm el-Sheikh that African leaders rejected external pressure to abandon Zimbabwe and chose instead to create conditions for reconciliation among Zimbabwe's main political parties through a SADC-facilitated process, a position we are grateful was supported by the Chinese government.
As China continues on its seemingly inexorable path to become the world's biggest economy, its links with Africa are bound to increase. The continent will be hoping, though, that by the time of the next FOCAC meeting in 3 years, there will be less focus on its natural resources and more on its human capital.